Okay, I think everyone's in the room now, slowly. Cool, welcome everyone. Hi. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll wait for a couple more people to come in. But whilst we're doing that, if you can in the chat, let us know where you're tuning in from today. What area? Is it like loads of London-based people? How nationwide are we today? Yeah, just pop in the chat where everyone's tuning in from. Great to see so many people here. I'm gonna kick off, I think, and more people will filter through, but really, really excited for the first year, like the first masterclass this year. It's a virtual one. It's dark in January and there's loads of people here tuning in, which is really exciting. So just some quick intros. I'm Bil-Marjiyah. My pronouns are she, her, and I work as the Community and Partnerships Program Manager. Maybe some of you will be familiar with me. If not, I look after our Springboard program, which is our entry-level support program, which supports entry-level candidates for 18 months once they've been hired through Creative Access. And I also look after our outreach strand of work, so facilitate creative, confidence-boosting workshops, and just let more people know that we exist. I also look after our masterclass stuff. So, really excited about today's panel. We've invited this incredible panel on the topic of community building, which I think is a topic and theme that Creative Access is really keen on, but also it's a topic that I think will continue to gain like momentum, especially throughout the year. In like the face of like tech and AI, I think there's the opposite side where human interaction and community and nurturing space is going to become super, super important. So I'm going to let the panel introduce themselves, which is really exciting. So they're going to talk through their name, pronouns, a little bit about what they do, and then we'll kick off. I can see a lot of people from London as well. East London, yeah, just like me. North London, cool. So Lucia, do you want to introduce yourself? And then Priya will go next.
Hi everyone, my name is Lucia Aide. I'm Thrive trainee at Creative Access, where I support the Thrive program, our mid-level career support program, but also I'm the founder of the Connect, which is a platform dedicated to curating experiences, creative projects, rooted in community connection and creativity. Um, yeah, and my pronouns are she, her.
Thanks, Lucia. Priya, what do you do? Who are you?
Hi, I'm Priya Biring. I am co-director of Wondering CIC. So yeah, we are a filmmaking company. We offer like kind of an alternative film school for people who wouldn't have access to filmmaking already. So at the moment, we work with people who have complex mental health. I also was a creative access intern over 13 years ago now, and yeah, so I had a 13-year career in TV in documentary film.
Cool, thanks so much. Ning, would love to hear about you.
Hi everyone, my name is Zuining Chang. I use they them pronouns. I'm the editor-in-chief at Choreo magazine. It's a literary magazine for sci-fi fantasy by immigrant and diaspora writers. I've also held a bunch of advocacy and leadership roles across both publishing and theatre, including things like co-founding Migrants in Theatre and producing for Global Voices Theatre, looking at international plays and collaborating with both UK and international theatre makers, and also supporting East and Southeast Asian creatives to break into media and arts more broadly.
Wow, what don't you do? That's
Too many things, too many things. I'm too
yeah,
greedy.
there's definitely a question of how you juggle so much. Thanks so much, Ning. And Ajay, what do you do?
Hello, everyone. My name is Ajay Papial. My pronouns are he and him. I'm the managing director and founder of Art Clubbers CIC. We're a not-for-profit arts organisation supporting young creators and emerging artists into the creative sector through a placemaking and culture regeneration. We've been running for about 7 years now, just before COVID, so we've gone through all of that, and we're still made out in the end. But apart from that, I juggle other hats as well across the theatre sector, so working for the Royal Ballet and Opera, as well as leading D&I kind of related work and some teaching and some lecturing at universities across the country.
Thanks, Ajay. So much expertise, so much to delve into. Yeah, I think we've got quite a good panel this evening, guys. So as we go through the conversation, do put in some questions. I'll keep an eye on the chat and try and embed. But I think everyone's got such a high level of expertise, and I think we're ready to delve into what community means. So just asking everyone today on the panel, what does community and belonging mean to you? Because I think it's a really subjective thing, and it'd be really interesting to hear, yeah, your guys' thoughts on it. Anyone can jump in first.
I'm happy to go.
Thanks.
Belonging and community, I think they mean a lot to me. I think I only realized how much they meant in my final year of university in 2024. And that was because of an essay that we did, and I wrote it on what belonging means and delved deep into my identity and um, all of those really interesting things. Um, but it also made me open my eyes to how much belonging and community has been like something that has followed me throughout my life. I have a mum that was really big on building community uh, as a Ugandan immigrant, and uh, what it really means to belong somewhere. I think that was something that was my eyes were open to very early on. Um, so yeah, it means a lot, and I think it is incredibly important, and it means safety. It means the freedom to be and show up as yourself. And I think that safety element has there's a huge responsibility on all of us to ensure that people feel safe, but especially people who organize those spaces as well.
Yeah, I like this the point that you made in terms of like your mum wanting to hone in on what community means. And straight away I just thought about the word anchor. There's something where like it's more rooted or permanent. And there's like loads of like gorgeous words that you can use to describe community that way as well. What about the rest of the panel? What do we think?
I was just thinking about three words, how I would sum it up, and I think that's people, place, and planet. I think those three for me really encompass what belonging is, in the sense that it really breaks down like people. I come from a very intersectional identity. I'm queer, I'm South Asian, born and raised in East London, and all of those things can be broken down to different communities, and sometimes those communities overlap. And is finding like where do I belong in those communities, and having people that I can rely on and trust and build friendships with. And in terms of place, I mentioned that from East London, and a lot of that my upbringing is influenced by the place that I've been growing up in. I now live in Kent, and so my lifestyle has changed and adapted to the place that I'm living in and kind of the work that I'm doing. And in terms of planet, I think that's really relevant to kind of our generation and future generations in terms of preserving what we have, cultivating what we have, but creating a community that kind of looks to the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like those three P's. Where in East London were you based? Because I'm from East London as well. And straight away I was like, community. Yeah. What was I going to say? Any other thoughts on community? What about you guys?
I'm gonna jump in. You can hear me. Is this better now? Hopefully.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I think for me, community and belonging is like very much agreeing with what people have already said, and also it's a recognition and acceptance of the sort of entirety of yourself. But at the same time, it's also solidarity and supporting other people. So your belonging doesn't come at the cost of other people's belonging within the same space. I think that's important to me, because I'm a first generation immigrant to the UK. So I'm originally from Malaysia, grew up there, but also have lived in various other places around Asia. And I think it's about like, I think there's often a sort of strong sense of I want to be able to fit into like or like people want to fit into a new space. They want to be able to understand like what's going on. They want to sort of be on the same wavelength with people. But I think firstly, it shouldn't come at the cost of yourself, but also that belonging doesn't close doors behind you for other people. I think for me, that's very important when building like community spaces, that you can sort of hold these people's multiple selves together and to facilitate like dialogue between that.
Yeah.
Just to jump in there, I feel like, community is all about, like holding that space is so important within the spaces that we're all in, right? And like we started a new group yesterday, we were all in person. There was 15 people in a room, and a lot of the people that join our groups and our courses they've been isolated for a very long time for a number of reasons, and so they have lost community. And a lot of them are so excited. They're like, right, I'm going to make a film and it's going to be great and we're going to do this and that. And I'm like, yeah, cool. But also, you're going to build community too. And that is absolutely invaluable for most people. And I think they don't realize how invaluable it's going to be and how important it's going to be for them in terms of like their filmmaking, but also just generally for them, growing as a person and like what projects they might want to do in the future. And so I've always felt like community lives within me, right? And I can create community wherever I want. And that's because I'm Indian. I've come from a very big Indian family, a big town in Kent, actually, funnily enough, Ajay. And I've just carried it wherever I go, can create community. So I think it is a skill, and you keep building it. You keep building it wherever you are. You never have to be, well, in quotes, alone.
Yeah, I like that. Community is in me. And also there's like, thanks so much. Everyone was kind of, as they were talking about what community and belonging means to them, you're kind of sharing your intersectionality and where you're from. And I think you can't have like a sense of belonging without being very honest or being able to articulate that kind of intersectionality and where you do overlap. And even within that, it's feeling safe enough to share where you're from, and then like being able to link and connect with other people as well. So thanks so much. And I think our audience has had some understanding of what community and belonging means. So Kaylee said community equals being there for others. There's just like this intrinsic instrumental kind of care for each other, which I think is fostered at Creative Access within our community, but also being explicit about that is super helpful as well. I just wanted to ask Lucia, so thinking about like belonging, and you kind of mentioned, I guess, your family's idea of belonging and how that might have fed into the way that you practice community. How do you build belonging for people who may not identify as creatives in a traditional sense?
Oh, good question. I think I'd start off by just sharing the Connect is a space that's for creators, for connection lovers and community seekers. And we're very intentional about making that clear because um, we want whoever aligns with those things, who's seeking those things, to feel at home in the spaces that we create. Um, and yeah, we put that at the center of everything we do. And I think the word creative can sometimes, I think it's an interesting word and an interesting title to put on yourself, because sometimes it can feel very intimidating hearing that word, and it can make it, and you can look at the word and feel like it's not something you align with or you resonate with, or other people see you as. Um, but I think what's always at the forefront when we're creating our spaces is that, um, well, I think it comes from a lot of my belief of like we all have a creative bone in our body. It's just whether a creative bone or muscle, it's just whether we exercise it or not. And I'm a true believer that creativity is at the heart of just everything in this world. And it's something that we can't run away from. It's something that we need. And I think we make that very clear in the way we market our events and projects, and but also the experience we create for people when they come to anything that we do. Um, so yeah, we're a space for everyone that wants to find community and exercise that creative muscle that I believe everyone has.
Yeah, I want to join the Connect now as well. I feel like, yeah, it just sounds like such a holistic way of supporting people. And I wanted to ask, I think a lot of people will be curious. So you're a little bit more, you've just started your career, I guess, at Creative Access.
Yeah.
So as a trainee, how are we like, how did you come up with the idea for the Connect, and then kind of, yeah, creating those events and building that momentum? Where does that all fit in, I guess?
Great question. The roots of the Connect started almost 10 years ago. February this year marks 10 years basically. And it started way back then because it sounds very cliche, but one day I woke up feeling like I wasn't doing enough. And I had discovered poetry and um, really wanted to give that feeling I felt when I would express myself through poetry to other young people. So I created a youth-led platform when I was 15. Um, and yeah, we went around London creating really cool events and stuff like that. And that's why I said earlier, belonging and community. I wasn't at the time, 10 years ago, it was just about the language I had for it was that I was gathering people and it was fun and it was so amazing and fulfilling seeing a vision from beginning to end. I think events are really great at doing that. Um, so yeah, that happened, but unfortunately, I had some loss that happened in 2019. So I took a pause, and I think that's important to mention because life really does happen on these journeys that we lead. Um, and yeah, I took a pause, went to uni, and then I found the courage to get back up again in 2023. And yeah, returned to what I love, but in a very in a way I didn't know all those years ago. I am a creative at heart and I love supporting creatives, so it just made sense to create a platform for them. And yeah, that's how the Connect began. That's the origin of it all. And when it comes to balancing it all, I think balance looks different every day. In different seasons, it looks different. But I think when something's your heart's work, you find a way to manage it all. And yeah, this is a part of my heart's work, and I believe the work that I do at Creative Access is another way of me fulfilling the mission that I believe I have as well. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much. Again, I feel like I'm like leaning on your every word. I'm like, oh my God, like when I was 15, I couldn't even spell community. Do you know what I mean? And you were like, I think you were kind of leading that or like going with a feeling and trusting that instinct.
Yeah.
And despite like, I don't know, the logistics and the practicality of like making a space, I think it's really, really clear that you're leading with a feeling and people are joining you and trusting you on that journey
Mhm.
because your instinct is so clear and like you have a lot of clarity around it. So
Mhm.
like it's so interesting hearing how like 10 years ago you had this like feeling and thought and like decided to like create and mold a space around that feeling. And it's like it's really it comes across as you're speaking about it. So thanks so much for sharing. And again, I'm sure you'll get loads of questions as
Thank you.
well. Ajay, I wanted to work. So I guess with Lucia's platform, it's a little bit more new, it's building, but Art Clubbers has been around for a long time, I feel like. So if you can explain, I guess, the conception of Art Clubbers, we kind of spoke about it earlier just between ourselves first, and then I'll ask you maybe a more intense question after that.
Yeah, when you say long time, it makes me feel a bit old.
Sorry.
But when you say long, it's fine. But yeah, Art Clubbers has been running for just over 7 years now. So we started in 2018. And the kind of the inception is very kind of what similar to what Lucia was talking about. This kind of idea of like, let's just bring people together, let's just make things happen. We didn't have the skill sets, we didn't have the language at the time to even like, articulate what's happening now. And so just before that, I graduated in 2016. I studied a BA in fine art, and upon graduating, coming into the real world, realized actually I don't have the skill set to be navigating the real world, and all the three careers that I could ever be whatever taught that I can get into was either a curator, an artist, or a teacher. And God forbid that anyone mentioned setting up a business in a very Marxist ideology school. But we really struggled to continue making because a lot of my friends who at uni all went back home, and we didn't have that kind of studio space to kind of continue making art and being creative. And a lot of us still had our artwork from graduation. And so I was talking to a couple of people who were in my year group, and a lot of us were struggling. And me and a friend were like, let's just put on a show together. Let's just find a way to do that. As we took over the Copeland and Bussey building in Peckham, I set up a one night show where we had 40 of our friends just come together, all pitch in financially, and just have an exhibition together. And that exhibition was called Club Collectivum. And for me, just witnessing that space and just seeing how we all just rallied together to make something really special inspired me to pursue this idea of art clubbers. So Club Collectivum became art clubbers, and so it's like we are our own club. And so I was 24 at the time, and the idea is that let's just create something that builds opportunities for us, that allows us to kind of be creative and kind of continue making things. And at the same time, I was working for a grassroots organization as kind of like computer director PA to in the organization. And just being in that role, even though I wasn't quite creative, I had been a sponge, just soaked up all the knowledge I needed to set up my own startup. These are skills that I were learning on the ground on a day-to-day basis through my job. And after working there for a year and a half, I decided to set up Art Clubbers, and that became its own little platform. And initially, it was literally just me and my friends just kind of coming together, trying to make things work, relying on each other to kind of bring different skill sets to the table. And so it felt collaborative. It wasn't me just creating something for myself. It was something for everyone around me. And that's what makes Art Clubbers really, really special, is that even till now, all my colleagues are people that I graduated with, and we've grown up together, we've developed, we've trained ourselves, we've trained each other. It continues being this space of learning and development.
Yeah, I love that. I think as you were talking, I was kind of reflecting on what my idea of the creative industries was, and it felt very singular. Like I felt like I was on my own with it. And it's really inspiring to hear you talk about how like the people that you started off with, you're still kind of growing together. And that's like what makes the creative industry, or what makes it like for me, like important or memorable. And I think it's really interesting to hear like Art Clubbers kind of came with this in response to not having anything to do. So it's like, what tangible things can we make and produce together that is like long lasting as well? And so Art Clubbers supports marginalized communities and platforms them. What does inclusion look like in practice beyond good intentions, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, for us, that's always been quite important. I mean, I'm being a intersectional founder myself. I didn't see people like me when I set up Art Clubbers before, and it was only through being so vulnerable with my own story that I, was attracting others who felt in a similar way. And I think that vulnerability about who I am as a person, and not just taking on this kind of CEO role, was really, really important, because that human level for me, that human level was really, really important. In practice, in our day-to-day work at Art Clubbers, I'm very, very adamant that all voices are brought to the table, regardless of what role you're playing, whether that's your project assistant or the senior manager or program manager or me or one of our directors. Everyone brings their voice to the table, because as I've grown as a person, I set up an organization for young people by young people. I'm no longer by definition a young person, sadly. So for me, it's really important that I continue to bring those voices that we're working with to the table. And we tried the whole youth advisory board, but it wasn't working for us. But for us, what was really important, that we employed people from those demographics to give them opportunities. So a living wage organization. So for us, we're always making sure we're paying under living wage for all of our opportunities. So for us, we're creating our own pathways, but also it's important that we're bringing those voices to our table. We host a monthly session called Climb, which stands for oh my god, it's going to be a bit of a tongue twister. Creating lasting impact by modeling better. And so what that means is that we all get together for half a day, bit of like a away day. We lay all of our projects on the table, and no matter who the funder is, we will then assess, does the work reflect our ethos and values? Is it getting to the people that we want to reach? Is it accessible? Is it not accessible? How do we make it accessible? And if we experience barriers, for example, externally from funders, we will go back and challenge that. Because for us, the work needs to be relatable to the communities that we are serving. But also, we talk about serving underrepresented marginalized groups. We talk about supporting people who are deaf and disabled. For me, that for the longest time was like, actually, we talk about working with these certain groups, but what are we doing as a team to make that happen? And that for us is all about taking an initiative to be able to reach and communicate with those communities. So for 2 years, I did my level 2 BSL course, so I can then communicate with the communities that I want to serve. And for us, that's where the learning always comes into place. We're always assessing how we can be better people before we can be better at our jobs.
Yes, I was like, period, better people. Like, I know what you mean. It's kind of really being able to represent the communities that you're serving, but also, I guess, moving away from othering them and almost borrowing, like not seeing the people in the stories as well. And I think it's really interesting you kind of sharing that there was, because I think a lot of community groups or like museums, galleries, they do embed that youth voice through a youth advisory board. So like kind of saying actually that wasn't working is like super refreshing, because we want young people in those places more permanently rather than kind of and upskilling them in those positions as well. So I
Yeah,
really like
we just found that youth advisory board model was only bringing young people to the table like quarterly or every so often, so they only get a snapshot of
yeah.
what the projects and the day-to-day workings are. So by having them working for us day to day, they actually got to embed themselves in the work and fully understand the constraints, the challenges, the things that are working for them to really create an informed decision about how we move our projects forward. So that's why that model wasn't working for us.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I guess it also gives young people in the communities that you're serving this sense of legacy and ownership over what they're talking about and creating. And this kind of feeds along nicely into my next question, which is for Priya, because would you like to describe what Wondering does? And then I can ask, the kind of, I guess, how you're serving those communities as well.
Yeah, so Wondering CIC, we set it up together, me and my colleague Matt. So we both didn't, have traditional film school kind of training, and we call ourselves an alternative film school because we're giving people opportunities that they would never have otherwise, right? And what's really interesting is coming from the TV whole career that I've been in for so long, it is crumbling. It's not the same as it was anymore. There are not the opportunities that there were. Gone are the days where people are knocking down your door to give you a job. It used to be easy for years and years. That's gone. And so what is it that we want to create if that bottom down, which is like commissioners kind of coming down and saying this is what everybody needs to see, is over, then it's coming bottom up, isn't it? That like people are really into YouTube grassroots ideas, and then let's no longer, this is the idea, let's no longer be the voyeur of people's stories. Let's let them tell their stories themselves. So the communities that we work with are people who are, I would say, marginalized in lots of different ways, and giving them the opportunity to tell their story and giving them the skills to do that is like, the stories that are coming out. Somebody came to one of our screenings recently and said it's like reading a diary over and over again because it's so personal and it's so raw, and it's like, well, yeah, that's the truth. You can't, if you're seeing it through my lens, looking at someone else's story, of course it's going to be different. So yeah, we created it for that reason, and so it's creating these opportunities that are then going on to create more research around like alternative health options as well, and preventative health. And then also looking at like campaigns within like big charities, like a big homeless charity. Why don't we tell that from the perspective of someone who is experiencing that themselves?
Yeah, it's like reading someone's diary. It sounds so personal, but also like empowers the individual to tell the story that they want to tell as well, and how they want to share something so emotional or close to them. And like filmmaking or documentary making is such like a personal way of sharing something, and it also feels really intimate for like a stranger to come and see that as well. And I wanted to ask, what responsibilities come with telling stories with communities rather than about them? That makes sense. So like, how are you navigating that dynamic?
Yeah, because it's this, like it's not just filmmaking that we're doing here. We're facilitating what I would call transformation in people, because there are parts of their lives that we ask people to look at that maybe they haven't wanted to look at for a very, very long time. So it's holding a lot of responsibility there. And of course, working with like the right charities, the right groups to make sure we have all the support available for that. But we are, you do see that there is this moment as you go throughout a course of like people who maybe have not wanted to tell their story or look at it before, and to actually see themselves on screen is huge. So of course, there's like challenges with working with people who have complex mental health or who've gone through, addiction or homelessness, but we're working with people who are like ready to be at that point in order to be able to tell that story. You can't work well, it's very, very difficult to work with someone who has had trauma that's just happened, like say like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and try and do something with that. It's not responsible at all to do that. So we have a very rigorous recruitment process, and we have funders within the council as well that we work with in order to make sure that is all done in the most ethical way possible.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask, I guess when Wondering was starting off, I imagine you were thinking about these challenges or how to properly support the marginalized communities. But like how, I guess like what was the beginning of that, or like what kind of things did you start putting in place in the beginning? Because I'm just thinking about any individual on like in the audience who wants to start their own community and space and is preempting these challenges. So like how did you tackle that or start working through it? Because I imagine it was a long process. But do you know?
Bil-Marjiyah, I think I'm not going to give you the answer you want, actually, because I did a talk at UCL recently to a group of master students who are studying creative health, right? So they're all wanting to create things that we're all doing. And it's like you can study as long as you want, or you can just go out and do. And I would, say that, my colleague Matt and I, we did just go out and do. And there are people who've come to us and said, like, I've been studying this or I've been doing research into this, but I'm not actually doing it. And it's like, well, we were learning on the ground. We've been doing research as we've been going. We had the support. We've been working with Mind in West London as like our flagship project for the past 4 years. And we have support from them. We have, trained mental health professionals in the room. So we created that partnership before we began. But it is about, if you're going to do it, you kind of we got the funding from a corporate sponsor within Westminster. And it's a win-win basically for them. You can't think that they just want to fund something because it's like a good deed that they're doing. It's a tax incentive for them at the end of the day, and that's what you need to hone into. Like, it's helping you and it's helping them. So I wouldn't say that it's like plain sailing at all, but it's definitely rewarding. And I would say to just go out and do it. That's the best thing you can do.
Yeah, I feel like Lucia said something similar, even when she was kind of saying how she built the connect. Is like you just do, and there is this, especially with the people that you're working with, there's that innate trust of like we'll work it out together, and I think it builds that resilience to those challenges of. And I think if your principle is correct in terms of I want to support these marginalized communities properly, then that's what you end up following in like a challenge or in like a crisis, is what I imagine. But that's super interesting, and thanks so much for sharing that. And it's like even as you're talking about it, I can see you kind of remember the journey of like what it was like in the beginning to what it is now. So yeah, it's super interesting. Dreening, I wanted to ask, thinking about journeys of like how organizations and belonging is like being created. Yeah, what is choreo? How did that come about? And then yeah, you can share some advice as well afterwards.
Yeah, sure. So, Choreo magazine has been around we're in our 6th year now. So we just finished off like 5th year celebrations last year. We were basically created because there was, as you all know, like over the last like decade or so, we've seen sort of this rise of xenophobia and anti-migrant rhetoric across the world, especially in various parts of the West. And we wanted to find a space where migrant writers can sort of be empowered to sort of to celebrate their own story. So they don't necessarily need to talk about stories about the migration experience, but we do think that to have moved in a lot of places, whether forcibly or otherwise, gives you a kind of different lens on things, just like any other experience would. And we wanted to kind of have a safe space where that would be sort of honored in various ways. So that was sort of like one of the impetus. The other impetus was that at a very prominent sci-fi fantasy award ceremony in I think it was 2020 or 2021, a very famous white author who was emceeing, who you will all know, but I will not say his name, basically got up on stage and mangled the names of everyone who wasn't white. And that made the founder of the magazine, Alexandra Hill, like really, really angry. And she basically then founded the magazine out of spite. I was one of the first team members who joined as a reader, and then afterwards I became an editor and then eventually editor-in-chief. So that sort of she was a bit like, well, you might not be someone who thinks that it's important or who honors that, but we want to be a space that does that for people. So that was kind of like how the magazine was born. And we are a quarterly magazine, so we publish an issue 4 times a year, usually about 5 to 6 stories each. Both we do English fiction, short stories, with any form of like speculative elements, so sci-fi, fantasy, horror, anything in between, or like with folkloric, etc. And we also, in the last couple of years since I took over, started publishing translations as well into English from any language in the world. You don't have to be based in a particular place to send stories to us. You just have to identify as being from like an immigrant diaspora background in any way. We don't police that either. So as long as, I think we describe it as like, if you feel like you're from here and elsewhere, that you face barriers or have had like a history of colonization inflicted on you, or you have to like you're from a refugee background or anything of that sort, then we welcome it, and we are not going to like police you for like, oh, you need to be a certain degree of migrant for it to be like viable. So yeah, that's what we do. I think we publish really nice stories. I really love all of them.
Yeah.
And I think for me, when I took over, it was important for me to continue to foster that safe space for writers, because we also work a lot with early career or debut writers. Like sometimes we are their first ever professional sale in publishing. But at the same time, I also wanted to make sure it's a safe space for our staff as well and our contributors. So like most of our staff are also of some kind of immigrant diaspora background. So it's a kind of like mutual symbiotic sort of relationship. And I want to make sure that it's that we are a space where that kind of trust and that kind of care extends both ways.
Yeah. That's so exciting. And so, again, sounds really busy. And I really liked earlier when you were explaining it's not just about the migrant experience. Like stories don't need to be specific to that. And I think one of the really important values of like creating these spaces where if you're from an intersectional background, marginalized background, you're welcome, but it's not just about the background that you're from. And it sounds like all of the groups here and the spaces here, that's what it's fostering. And it's like this kind of unspoken language and I guess like seeing each other, but also there's so much more creativity outside of that, which is really exciting as well. And Zrining, I just wanted to ask, what advice would you give someone trying to build a community from scratch? Which I think is a really big question, and I'm sorry you had this question on your own, but yeah, any advice?
I think there's various things. I think be clear about what you want the community to do. Like what's the goal of like coming together? What's the purpose behind it? If it's a writing thing, then it's like, is it craft centric? Is it genre centric? Is that I want some friends who also write like science fiction to also all be together? It doesn't really matter, and you just want to have people to be like accountability buddies together, and you all just have to write a manuscript at the end. It doesn't matter what genre it is. Or is it you're coming together because you're all from same or similar like marginalized backgrounds and you want to be able to, commiserate about common experiences, or, there's a lot of like whisper networks and stuff in like publishing, and I'm sure in other industries, to be like people you should avoid, or sort of like these are abusive agents, or if you want to send like a query package to somebody, this is the formatting they'll expect. And if you're not somebody who like comes from an arts background, has an arts family, you might not know this information. So then community is really important to kind of make sure that you understand the language and the ethic to best present yourself to an industry. So that's a form of community. I think for when I have built communities, it's always important to me that we kind of agree on a broad code of conduct, and to be consistent in holding that space. So like, if you set certain ground rules about how people treat each other, and someone disobeys that, someone's like being racist or sexist or whatever, then you kind of make sure that you enforce your facilitation, because otherwise it would not be a safe space for everybody else. And if you say like, oh, this is a sort of like a group that we want to sort of have over a period of time, I think try and stick to it. I think sometimes because we often can get overwhelmed or burned out or busy, then things can kind of fall by the wayside. So you have to think of, I think, like the sort of priority level that you want to give it. And you don't always have to like do it yourself. It is a community. So if it's like, oh, like I'm really busy this month, so maybe like someone else can do a facilitation or hold that space. And you just have to like check in with like your team or whoever you are in that space with to make sure that you're doing it together. Because in the end, it's not, in the end, like when I'm running a space or when I sort of like am part of a community, it's not really about me, but it's about making sure that the community itself is a space that everyone feels a part of, feels that they can contribute to, as well as they can like have takeaways from. And that means like everybody has a part to play to maintain that, and not just whoever's sort of like running the session. And also it's like it is about people coming together. So you can come together for like writing and talking books and media and stuff, but also like hang out, talk to each other about your lives, go and have some good food together if you are like in a space where you can go out and meet in person, things like that. So have fun with it. I think that's often the best way to kind of forge like relationships with people as well, where you kind of connect, not just on like the broad purpose or mission of all what you do, but also over the small things. And then you can like build it over time.
Yeah, I really like that. I like the end bit. It's like just go and have a meal together. I think that's what can sometimes feel intimidating when you kind of say like, how do you create a community or sense of belonging? And it feels very like you have to have a strategy and kind of think about your shared goals, which is all super important. But part of community is just being around each other as well. So yeah, that's really interesting. And I'm glad that you've said it, because that is, I think, part, like Lucia said it, Priya said it, it's kind of just doing it and like having an evening and being able to spend time with like-minded people. That's your community. You can say that you've nurtured or created or are part of a community in a sense that's like you're intentional about how you hang out, essentially, which I think makes it a bit more accessible. And maybe, Lucia, that's how the Connect started, where you're just like chilling and hanging out, and it's like, oh, actually we can see where else we can take this, which is super exciting. I wanted to ask a question to the whole panel, so anyone can jump out and say their thoughts. What unexpected turns did your career take that ended up shaping your path for the better?
I can go first with this one if you want. So it was in 2024, I got a documentary of my own commissioned, which was huge. And it was an idea that I'd been working on for 7 years. It's on Channel 5. It's about a guy who had been arrested for murder in America, but he's from the UK, and he said that he was innocent. Anyway, I was not allowed to direct this project. It was a real blow for me, and very, very difficult. And I was not treated very well in this production. And I thought, God, I've been through all these years in TV, and it's been really difficult. This is supposed to be the pinnacle of my career, and it just wasn't. It just really wasn't. It was one of the toughest things I've ever done and worked on and worked through. I don't regret it at all, and especially for the person who is in prison, I'm glad the story was told. But what it did was, I was told as well by a lot of people at that time, like, this is it, this is huge for you. The phone will be ringing off the hook after this, and to get an idea commissioned is quite unusual, especially for someone who's not in development. What it really led to was me saying, I've had enough. I've had enough of this career where I don't have autonomy myself, and I'm going to create my own path. And this is where kind of Wondering was born, because we went all in on it. And now we've got lots more projects with lots of other organizations, and not just with Mind, that we're doing. So, where my attention went shifted. And so therefore more was able to grow there. So it felt like it was, one of the worst things to have happened. But to be honest, with the way the industry is going at the moment, it's like everyone's having to diversify and find other ways. And what I'm seeing a lot of the time is that there are so many great ideas that just can't be commissioned or won't be. And so you've got to get yourself noticed in other ways, and people are doing that in very, very creative ways. And like, what we're doing with community is one of them, but there are lots of ways to do it. There are, lots of platforms.
Thanks so much for sharing. And it's really interesting you're talking about like funding, because I have a question for you, Ajay, about what funding, I guess, like the challenges of getting funding. So what helps keep a community alive when funding is uncertain or resources are stretched? Which I think Priya has spoken to a little bit, but yeah, what is Art Clubbers? How's that going with that?
Yeah, I mean, the last 7 years, we've seen the years change in terms of how we are funded and how we work. And I guess the structure of a CIC, if no one's familiar with it, is you get the opportunity to apply for grants, but also do kind of commission-based work and get work in other ways. When we first started, we were 100% reliant on grant funding. And that's the only route we really knew, because it was like, we just started, we don't really have a portfolio of work. Let's just apply for some pilot funding and just get some projects off the ground. And just by doing that, we started to build a portfolio of work and were consistent with the work that we delivered, to the point where we were then packaging that up and then turning it into something that we can then sell to other clients. So we started working with local authorities who would want us to kind of start delivering their programming, because we had a really strong blueprint of the way we worked and the kind of the mission and the impact that we had created. And it's storytelling, I think, is really, really important when it comes to funding and kind of accessing sponsorships or donations. We've been quite successful in the past to get sponsorships and donations from kind of developers or whatnot to really support our kind of more place-based work. But the way we tell our story is really important, and we try to capture as many individual stories from communities. The work goes beyond just the individual that we're supporting, because it has a ripple effect to their community as well. So we try to capture the stories and say, this is the good work that we're trying to do. And that allows us to really pull on some heartstrings in terms of like trying to get some more funding and sponsorship. It's tricky. It's hard. It requires a lot of resilience. And when I remember one thing my director who I used to work for when I first kind of came out of university had said, and I was like, I really want to get into project management. It looks so fun. And the first thing she said to me at 22 was, project management is 80% admin and 20% fun. And I've carried that through my own journey, through Art Clubbers, through all the careers that I've gone through, all the roles I've taken, is that it's always going to be 80% admin. And most of the time I am behind a desk, I am writing those funding applications, I am having one-to-one conversations and having coffee catch-ups, and we're always trying to sell our work. And it can be quite exhausting. We receive more no's than yeses, and the yeses that we do get will make an impact to the work. And I don't want to say if anyone's kind of going down the funding route and it's probably had loads of no's right now, keep at it, keep talking to people, get other people to proofread it. And that's where this kind of community and belonging really comes into place. Last year I was in a really tricky place with the business, and because I had developed this really strong community and network of other kind of like-minded founders who we kind of started at similar times and kind of have grown together, I can then approach them saying, actually, you've just got a really successful national lottery grant. Could you read over my application? And because that kind of community has been built, we're happy to support each other, even though we have our own ventures that we're trying to work on. And I think a big keyword here is friendship. It's developing friendship before partnerships. And I think we can go down the kind of corporate jargon, developing partnerships with people and kind of other organizations. But at the end of the day, like the person who is in that partnership role is a person. Let's be friends first before we can start talking business. And that's kind of been my way of building my community, is developing friendships in different areas that I can work in. So yeah, it's a tricky one to answer, to be honest, because it does depend generally, and the current landscape, is quite tricky for anyone who is applying for funding and stuff like that. We currently work on a year by year basis, so we're always at, when it comes to the end of financial year, we're kind of on our tiptoes and wondering if there's going to be many more funding coming through. And it can be quite challenging to promise people a long-term thing, and I think that's what we're working with now. So just for full transparency, where we are with Art Club is this year we've taken a break from delivery. We're focusing on fundraising. We're focusing on a long-term strategy for the organization, for it to kind of continue running and continue making a bigger impact that we want. And it's okay to take a step back, even though we're 7 years in the game, we're well established. I decided for my own mental health and well-being was to take a step back, reassess where we are, reassess how we want to grow, get the funding that we want, and offer people long-term contracts. When I started off at 24, I was living with my parents still, so I had the safe space to kind of take a gamble at that time and start a business. There wasn't a lot to lose at that point. Now I'm 32. I have a mortgage to pay. My priorities have shifted, and going forwards, my priorities will shift again if I want to have a family in the future. So the business needs to then reflect my livelihood in some sense. Like, how is it supporting me as an individual, and how am I supporting, what am I bringing to the organization? So it's a kind of two-way response, because you do kind of live and breathe it. So yeah, I think I can go on, but hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, definitely. I think it shows the tension of like wanting to create and nurture those intentional spaces, but also the stress of the like running the operation, I guess. And also in my head, if I like want to create community, I guess I have the privilege to step in and out of it. And it's really interesting, Ajay, to hear your experience where this is what you have and you're holding, and like what it's like to make those decisions of like, I need to step away because then I need to make sure that the things I'm delivering will help the communities that I'm serving without it also doing a disservice to myself. It's like such an interesting tension. I think when we were just talking amongst ourselves, you mentioned like, is it like a savior complex thing where I'm trying to overexert and like quote unquote save the community that I relate to, but actually is it like a survival response where it's like I want to stay and I want to have like a legacy and last in this space for a long time as well. So yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. I think it gives an insight into what it can look like in the beginning, but also in 10 years time, 7 years time, what else to preempt as well. And I think it really relies on like the state of the creative industries, and that's one of the industries that so much. You spoke to it as well in film and TV.
I think it's just to add is that, if you ever find yourself in a financial position where you do have to fold the business, it's not it's because it was a failure or unsuccessful. It's just the climate that you're in. And I think we live in a community or a society where success is based on growth, but sometimes just to stop and then close is also quite successful. The success in itself that you've made, looking back and made an impact and remembering that. So I think with anyone going into business, setting up a business or starting with their own, don't worry about the long term. Do the impact now, worry about growth later, and then if it just naturally grows, great. If not, you've made some impact.
Right? It's like yourself and then also the world outside of yourself as well, which is super nice. Lucy, I want to come to you. Oh, sorry, Israel. Yeah, please do.
Oh, sorry. I just kind of wanted to respond to what AJ said, because I have kind of like an example of an opposite experience actually. That was also due to essentially like an unexpected turn, which was COVID. So pre-COVID, I was very intensely involved in theatre, both as a theatre maker as well as a community builder in theatre. One of the things that I ran was Global Voices Theatre, that ran that was about bringing international plays into the UK and working with UK-based migrant and diaspora creatives to put it on so that the UK, which is a very sort of like pretty much I'll say like very British-centric, English-centric like theatre landscape, can kind of see what theatre making looks like somewhere else. And actually, after the pandemic, I both shifted my focus to be more publishing centric, but also we folded the company because it was not sustainable post pandemic to continue the work that we were doing. It was three of us, myself and two other creatives who were both like we were all serving a producing capacity. And what we did was basically we created the space in which a curator from a certain community as well as like artists from that community can come in and play in that space and share work with each other. And essentially during the pandemic, we like applied for a lot of funding that we didn't get at any point at all. And it became a kind of question of like we were putting in a lot of unpaid labor and hours to try and sustain something that essentially only happens whenever the sort of stars all came together and aligned. And pre-pandemic, we did we've done like work that to me I still think is really good for the time that it was in. Like we had about 10 like reading events, we ran workshops on sort of like political theatre for emerging playwrights. We also have a couple of projects that I guess survived the folding of the company, which is we published a couple of play anthologies through Bloomsbury that kind of, so even though we didn't manage to put on the plays themselves, they now survive in book form that hopefully other people can put on. But yeah, but basically after the pandemic, we realized after several like difficult conversations that we were ourselves in different places. We wanted different things from our creative careers. One of my colleagues moved out of London to Sheffield, so it became much harder for us to meet and to make stuff as well. And it was like was said, it was the circumstances. I don't think the work became less valuable in any way or any less necessary, but we were thinking, are we in a place to do justice to that work? Do we have the resources to make that work happen? And the answer to sort of all of that in the end was not really. The vehicle of the company through which we were doing this work was not serving the thing that we wanted to do. And that didn't mean I stopped being interested in any of these things. Like I'm still really invested in like international writers and in marginalized groups. And I do very similar work now in a different part of the creative sector. But it was just that particular vehicle no longer worked. And I think there's never a sort of right time or right answer about when to push forward and when to not do that. Like maybe sometimes like things align and Arts Council says yes and you survive to live another year, and sometimes it doesn't. So I think that's sort of like I guess the not happy ending to the story in some ways, but in other ways I think I forged a lot of relationships during the 6 years of the company's existence, through which I still count many as my friends, people who I still talk to. I still connect people for collaborations because I'm like, oh, someone's asking me for an actor from like this background, or someone is like, I'm looking for like this other creative. I'm like, hey, I know this person and I can send you two off to hopefully make another thing together. So I think they are like shadows of all of those things that continue to exist in various different forms that may not be your original community, but I think that's still all of that's still like equally valuable in its own way.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is like just take the pressure off of like we want to create a community, right? And you said so many other things as well. I was like, yeah. But I think it's this separating yourself, or having a bit of like boundaries of like, I would love to create this space and nurture this space, but just because if it does, close down or something else comes in place, doesn't mean that community doesn't last as well. I think having that kind of that perspective means that the connections that you're forging and fostering maybe feel a bit more genuine as well. And Lucy, I can see you nodding. Like I think it's really interesting having like the dual perspective, because the Connect is like kind of new but also has been here for a long time. And I wanted to ask, like, how do you encourage people to show up? Because we've heard lots about the, I guess, organizational, logistical things of applying for grants and tackling those challenges, but thinking a bit more person-centric, like how are you enabling someone to show up as themselves or encouraging that, especially those who feel intimidated by creative spaces?
Great question. I think we're really honest about how performative and transactional this industry and this world can be, and the spaces that we create can sometimes be. Um, s- a part of the Connect's essence comes from me going to events and feeling performative energy and feeling like people are here to only take and are looking for what they can get rather than what they can give, and feeling like they can really show up as themselves. So I guess one of the ways that we try to ensure that is, yeah, let's be honest about the realities of like what some of these spaces can be like, but also we set rules at the beginning of every event or project we run, and one of the rules is to be as um interested in people as you are interesting, and I think that encourages individuals um to lead with wanting to learn about someone else. When we're doing a networking event and we structure it and make it as easy as possible for people to like engage with people and things like that. We do those things and put a lot of thought into them, to ensure that both parties are feeling like they can share who they are and feel comfortable enough to do so. But I also owe the I owe us being able to get people to really show up as themselves to the team. Um, I work with a team of three individuals who are good vibes. They're amazing people. And I think I encourage them to always lead with that energy. And I think it starts at us as soon as people get in the door, like greeting them, giving them great energy, and also encouraging people to come to our events alone, and knowing that we're going to be there for them. Um, I think one of our unique selling points is that we are really intentional about making networking and connection as easy as possible for people. It's so difficult to talk to people sometimes and to network, and networking is such a annoying thing sometimes to a lot of people, but I think it's a muscle that has to be exercised. I think it's more about, and when people ask me for advice on how do I network, how do you, because I love to network, I love to speak to people, um how do you do it kind of thing. I always let individuals know that it's about whether you're extroverted, introverted, wherever you sit on that spectrum, it's about learning how to network in a way that is comfortable for you. And at the center of that has to be like this is going to benefit me, but in a sense of like I'm going to gain connections and I'm going to use my voice. Really important things that I think um connect us to people, that get us engaged in community and find belonging and things like that. So yeah, I think we center safety, we center people being as honest as they wish to be in our spaces. And I think a huge part of it is just the team making people feel really welcome and feeling at home, like they belong. So yeah.
I feel like you'll be a great hostess at a dinner party. Do you know what I mean? Like
Oh,
just making sure
absolutely.
everyone's comfortable, everyone's got their
For
drink
sure.
topped up, no allergy. Do you know, like
For
I,
sure.
I know what you mean. I think it's just making sure that like how you would want to feel comfortable and kind of practicing that amongst people. And I really like what you said about the networking in terms of it's just how you feel most comfortable. Like there is this idea and misconception that there is one way to network and one successful way to network. So yeah, really like really like that, and it sounds like everyone's having a good time at the Connect. Someone said in the chat, been to some of the Connect events and have done some work alongside Lucia, and can definitely say it's a great community, a lot of fun, engaging, and there's a lot of care and thought, which you've articulated as well, Lucia, so that's lovely. We've just got a couple more minutes, so we've got a few questions from the audience, and I'm gonna chuck them at you guys. Hopefully it's not too bad. So someone has asked, for someone who plans their, or their name's Fatini, has asked, for someone who plans their first career steps, how to build their community. For someone who plans their first career steps, how to build their community, how do you find the right workmates to cooperate with? So how are you identifying, I guess, people to build a community with? Ajay, I feel like you spoke to it about friendship, or is there anything else?
Yeah, I just want to add, like, even on friendship, I think it's really important which friends you bring on. There was an incident where me and a friend were working together on projects and in art clubs, and we found out there were some troubles with the project. So obviously, there's always that fine line between being professional but also being still friends. And in that situation, it was really hard to navigate trying to save a friendship, but also like having to let them go as an employee. And emotions come into place. It can be quite challenging to navigate. So I think it's really laying down those foundations with the people that you're working with. Is that let's not try and take things personal. Let's try and create a team culture, like a culture contract that we are abiding to as a team that doesn't affect our friendship. But it's being in a role of leadership that can be quite challenging as well, because I need to look at what's integral to the organization and keep the business running. What are the kind of risks that are coming up if someone's making really big risks, because a lot of work is place-based, it's community focused, there's a lot of safeguarding and risk involved in that. I then have to make that final judgment call, whether this person can do is working with us, how can they be trained if there's a way to find a way to keep working with them. But naturally, we've gone through different routes as well. We went through the Kickstart scheme during COVID, and we've had colleagues from there who went from the Kickstart scheme and then became full-time members of staff. People who have volunteered for us have been given paid opportunities as well. So as our community has grown and developed, it's allowed us to build relationships with other people and build friendships with other people. So yeah, it takes time, it takes a while, but then we have gone down the recruitment process as well, where we use a positive action scheme to identify indices and needs. For example, if there's someone who is female, Black, and queer versus someone who is female, white, and queer, the additional barrier this individual is facing is race into the industry. We know there's multiple barriers into the industry. We're going to give that person the opportunity because we know what they're experiencing in terms of barriers into the world, into the creative world. So we use different ways to build our community.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ajay. We have a question from Danique. Do you have any advice for creating a community of writers? I think that's for you, joining.
Yeah, so I think I mentioned briefly a few things earlier, but to kind of go deeper, I would say for me, I always center the writer's vision in all the collaboration that I do, both at the sort of highest levels of the magazine, but also in like one-to-one collaboration with the writer. For instance, at Choreo, the nature of the people that we get write stories from is that they can be from everywhere. They might use various different styles of English. They might have like various kinds of formatting, various forms of multilingualism in the story. And we always make sure to kind of center that and to involve like the writer in every step of the process in terms of like all like what are their editing preferences, what kind of copy editing do they want done, like British English, American English, something else. When we do audio as well on their stories, so our audio director and casting director will always ask them for their preferences for like audio narrators. Do they want like for instance like a Black woman with like an American Southern accent, like very specifically, then we will go and look for somebody that kind of honors the story that they are telling in that particular way. I think with other forms of like community more broadly, again, kind of coming back to like what would you like to get out of the community? What would you be looking for yourself? I would also say like don't just look for sort of like big established people to join the community. Like look for people at your same level or look for junior people, people who are emerging as well, so that you all can like learn and grow and help each other together and then celebrate wins at roughly the same level. I think that's always really good. And then you can keep pace with each other or encourage each other rather than sort of have this like intimidating like figure like towering over the rest of you. Because I think it is like everyone has said, really about the relationships and about like to me it's about being able to like help each other to lift each other up. So you want to be able to find people who vibe with you the same way.
Yeah, really like that. Thanks so much. We've got one question. What do you think is one of the most surprising skills that's helped you build your communities?
I'm going to say working in radio. Um, I did used to be quite a confident person in terms of public speaking. And after I had left my first ever job, I was jobless. And I just came across this person who used to work in radio. I was like, oh, come along and just watch me do my radio show. Went along a couple of times and did a voice test and then was given the slot on a Sunday from 1 to 4. And then now doing a live radio show for me was probably the kind of the most random thing I did, but in a way has really helped me in terms of my professional development. Yeah, I took the skills that I was learning on radio and just presenting myself, planning and building a show, being able to articulate myself, was really, really great. Yeah, and I was able to use that skill set because I ended up doing a TEDx talk. So to have that skill set allowed me to grow and develop, and be an advocate for my own organization and my work.
Cool. Anyone else? Any surprising skills? Someone's gonna be like sewing or something. No.
Mine, I don't know how actually, no, I think relationship building, networking skills has been really key on my journey. I think back to the first event the Connect produced in London in August 2023, and a lot of why we sold out that event was because I made sure I was at every creative event in London, basically, and talked to people. And this was a very interesting time for me because I'd taken so much time out since 2019, since doing an event in London. So there was a lot of courage I had to build up to start getting back in there and meeting people, talking to people, and sharing who I was. But um, yeah, talking to people, my public speaking skills, that really came in handy with getting people to that event. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, we've headed towards the end of the panel. I think that was such an interesting chat. I feel like there's so much we could go on the whole evening, but I'm not going to keep anyone hostage. Yeah, thanks so much. I think we're going to throw up some slides in terms of our next masterclass and also feedback. It'll be really good to get some feedback off of everyone. Just let us know, was it interesting? Because I found it really great, but maybe no one else did. No, I'm sure you guys did. It was really great hearing from all the panelists, such like exciting stuff that we're all up to. We're just going to put up the next masterclass is with South Bank. So it's an in-person masterclass in London. Laura, I think it's the next slide, if you can move it over. If you scan the QR code, you can join that masterclass. I don't know if the slide seems to be stuck. And then, yeah, send us some feedback, guys. Let us know if you want more of this. Yeah, and again, thanks so much for the panelists. I feel like you guys were so articulate, and I feel like grateful to hear about the spaces that you guys have carved out. It's so intentional, and it's what's needed in the creative industry. I feel like the creative industry is always going through some strife and turmoil. I'm very lucky that the kind of marginalized groups can kind of join these spaces when they find them as well. So really grateful, and thank you so much for sharing your insights. Yes, here's the masterclass for February. It's on Thursday 26th in the evening. It's in person. We get a tour of an exhibition. Mira's put up the link as well if you want to sign up. And then the next slide is feedback. So please do scan the QR code and let us know, like, give good feedback to these guys. They've just given us their evening, you know, on a Tuesday in January. It's cold and dark. But yeah, once you fill out the feedback, please, yeah, you're welcome to leave. But yeah, thank you so much, everybody. Yeah, there's a feedback code. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you for your brilliant moderation of the event. It's really
Guys,
great.
Bil-Marjiyah.
no worries. Yeah, I feel like we could have had a chat for ages. It was giving podcast. But yeah, thank you. Mira's going to also put the link of the feedback in the chat. So if anyone wants to let us know how that was.
I feel like people are already hitting off, but if they are not, or if you want to reiterate to people on email afterwards, I'm always happy if people want to contact me to be linked. I saw there was a comment somewhere about like how do I find like communities and stuff, and I'm very happy to sort of be like, these are several examples of communities that you can join if they are relevant to you. So people can always, like, you are always very welcome to reach out to me for that if you like. And I also often get people reaching out to me specifically if you are like a first-gen migrant artist who is facing issues with the hostile environment in the UK. And I'm happy to direct you to resources about that. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll let everyone know in the follow-up email as well. Cool. I think we're gonna end it here. But again, thanks so much. Yeah, hope we get a break from our screens now and kind of I might stare at a wall for a bit, but otherwise, thank you so much, and yeah, have a lovely rest of your evening.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Thanks.